example, organically ranking will have such an impact on your business long term, where your cost per acquisition will be as inexpensive as free, depending on your market, right? And if you can't get results, you don't get paid. Is it possible to hire a marketing unicorn going into 2023? Does that exist?
Oh boy.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Challenge Opportunity Podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris Lawson. As usual, I'm joined with Jordan Woolf, our other co-host, who is massively passionate about tobogganing in the Caribbean. I don't know why that is the case. Any advice to those who are new to tobogganing, Jordan Woolf?
No, I can't say I have any secrets that I want to pass on at this point.
Oh, so it's... Okay, gotcha. Well,
we wacky things that I'm into, apparently.
You are weird and wacky. At our agency, everybody laughs all the time because you have this engineer mindset where every single thing that you have to do has to be able to be, replicated every day. And I think people are going to laugh because, as people continue to watch our podcast, you'll probably be wearing the same exact outfit every single day, but people will not understand that it's probably, hoodie number 2 of 14 because you have like one for every day of the next 2 weeks.
I'll admit it. I am that guy. I've got, a bunch of the same shirt in slightly different shades of black to gray, same pants, same hoodies, everything. It just makes it a lot easier to choose what your outfit is if you only have one real outfit and you just kind of mix and match shades.
So are you like Elon Musk? Like, how much sleep do you get at night?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe about 6 hours, I guess. 7 if on a good night.
What is that? Is that engineered?
I think that's healthy. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to be a workaholic and also plan for your sleeping. It's kind of that inevitable endless battle in your brain where it's like, well, I could sleep, but I could also work. But, well, I mean, we don't all have a big sweater collection where we get that from, Psychologists Anonymous.
Yeah. I have some pretty funky sweaters. I remember I wore that one sweater that was red with a bunch of sheep on it with black wolves, and you guys all made fun of me, and so I can't wear that anymore to the office. But it's my cross to bear. Well, hey, we're on another episode. Honestly, I think our last episode was way deeper than we initially thought. We had a few topics we wanted to cover, and it turned into a crash course on marketing systems engineering almost. But we touched on a number of different topics, specifically around like are marketers wrong? How do we build out marketing mixes and things like that? We touched on that, but we want to kind of go a little bit deeper, don't we, today, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit a chord with that. We've gotten some initial feedback on some people that we previewed that episode with shortly after we recorded it, and that seemed to be the thing that people were resonating with the most. So we're just starting this podcast out as you know, and we want to build this audience around what's going to be most useful for that audience as it evolves. But if we just continue along that route, I think that'll be wise. Yeah. So I mean, looking at marketers more critically and where we are, the assumptions that we have, the kind of built-in legacy of what we build up this world and this career to be, whether that's agency side or you're going to be a specialist at a company client side. Those types of careers get started with usually a dream or a passion that somebody has. Maybe they're a creative individual. Maybe they think a little bit differently. That's the type of people we get around in the marketing world, and it's fun. It's a great place to be. I'm not going to knock it on that front, but it does come with a lot of built-in expectations, both on the marketer's side as an employee or the agency side or on even the business and owner side.
Well, I mean, we have a pretty unique take on pretty much anything marketing because, as an agency, we tend to look at other agencies and we're able to pick them apart, not in a judgy way, but just, you've been there, you've done that, you failed. and you're always trying to refine and tweak things to the point where, as an agency, you have a model that's sustainable, not just for you yourself as an agency owner, but for your staffing, for the businesses you work with. They're paying you good money to, frankly, get you results, and if you can't get results, um, you don't get paid. That's just the reality. And so we have
Yeah.
this kind of unique perspective where we're able to kind of like pick business models apart and come across new challenges and take those challenges that we've learned and apply them to other client scenarios, things like that. Um, but we tend to kind of, view all these things from a different lens, which kind of helps us to operate the agency or, the conversations we have with clients a little differently.
Yeah, and last time we talked about consistency as kind of the thing that, if we're viewing the world through a certain lens, the view that we should be taking now going into 2023 and beyond is really our job is more about gaining consistency around marketing results and getting those things, those KPIs in a place where businesses can make investments and be confident about the growth that they're expecting and the outcomes for the work that we do as marketers. It's kind of difficult at this point, and this might be a bit of a hot take and get us a little bit of, or at least get us
Uh-oh.
some critical water where people might be like, "Hey, you can't mess with that." But it's not Mad Men anymore. Marketing
Mm.
is not that world. Try to put the consistency label on that TV series, and it's going to be a hard fit. That's kind of a square peg in a round hole, trying to force that idea into that view set of what marketing or an agency would be like. It's very difficult to match those two worlds up if that's what we're proposing the future is going to be more like.
So are you referring to the whole concept of um, coming up with a really cool creative concept, some plop plop fizz fizz or some idea that, is going to just revolutionize the the market or the business model just from one random thought?
Yeah, I mean, these short-term luck elements or like this
Yeah.
gut reaction as a
Mm.
creative or a marketing genius, while they still happen and those are great, I'm not going to turn those down. That's not going to guarantee your success in your career anymore or as a business. They may just be flash in the pan, like moments of like, yay, that also happened. Fantastic. Let's celebrate it for a minute. But the fundamentals that are going to drive your business and your marketing mix and your decisions that you make around where you place your dollars in advertising or the different marketing content pieces that you produce are probably going to be based upon data analytics driving long-term success. And that's not sexy, but that is really what's going to make sure that your business is making the right investments. And in today's day and age, that's the expectation that the market is placing upon us. This isn't
Hmm.
like me going, oh, we have to do this in this way. It's just looking at the honest landscape of marketing today and going, well, what is the marketing world telling us we need to be doing? It's this, because your competitors will do it if you don't.
Okay, so here's the question for you then. So if we're in a situation where data analytics, methodology, process is driving results, where do those creative agencies, where do those PR agencies, where do the freelance photographer, like where do these guys fit in the mix?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to draw back to my own, story and how I got into marketing. My father was very much embedded in the business side of things, doing a lot of
Mhm.
kind of startup and takeover business planning. I always admired that. I thought that was fantastic. But he
That
came
was in
from a
Vancouver,
finance
right?
background. Yeah, in Vancouver. Yeah, but he was in the finance background. He had a finance degree, a lot of numbers, a lot of spreadsheets. That's not really something I found that exciting, if I'm being honest. I was
Hmm.
more of a creative person. I would sketch and draw and, really accelerated in those areas. But I still wanted to be in that world. So for me, the light bulb kind of came on that, hey, marketing is a great place where I can combine creative ideas and strategy and
Hmm.
business all together in this nice little ball. That's where I started. Where the career has really taken me over time is that I've had to develop skills that are now responding to these trends. I've had to look at the world through more of an engineering mindset, which works for me, great. But for even those that are just getting started in this career, learning data science, learning a bit of how to visualize and understand patterns that emerge from data is going to make a huge difference in your ability to do creative work that
Hmm.
then hits a deliverable and then turns into a model that you can then repeat and show your value to the businesses you work for. So mixing your career education, whether that's at upfront or into the future with these types of skills in mind, where data is playing a bigger and bigger role, and looking at patterns and presentation of information is a big part of kind of what we do, the stagecraft of marketing, as we say. I think is really the most important trend I'm seeing so far.
It's really interesting kind of hearing your story as to, why you kind of got into marketing. I'm actually the complete opposite. I grew up in marketing and thought marketing was really fun and sexy. My mom was we'll just say a marketer in a really, really large company for a couple of decades. And my dad was in radio, so I was exposed to that world. And I never thought for a second that would be where I'd go. I thought I'd be an architect or, a pilot or, firefighter or something as a young kid, right? But as time went on and I got into my career as a banker and then a consultant for business and things like that, my passion was actually rooted in problems and solving them for companies for good. It was never about marketing. Marketing was a tactic. And for me, helping a business achieve what they're capable of, or an individual achieve, something bigger than themselves, was something that, frankly, even to this day, I'm extremely passionate about, which is why I love the initial strategies part of my job. But a lot of the time, solving those problems means engineering consistency and stability and getting to a point where, what you did once, you could replicate over and over and over again, whether that be you're in the Caribbean and you're trying to get expats to buy real estate. How the heck do you get them there when they're 7 hours away, all the way through to just process, in your organization, to handle the leads that came in is, and we could do a whole podcast on that topic alone, but, consistency and process engineering, I think for me has been not just revolutionary in my career, but at the core, just a part of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned kind of the way that you have this stability and consistency is words we've tossed around a lot. As much as we were talking about developing into a career, like just as a step that you take in your day-to-day, marketing mixes is something we always talk about. That's one of the first initial strategies, things that we're usually dealing with when somebody comes to our agency, is like, well, tell me about your marketing mix, or tell me about the things that you're doing now, and then where you want to go. Viewing the data is one great way to understand where you were and where you're going. But also just looking at that lens through that data, I think gives you that engineering, again, look at the world, like you mentioned. How were people, when you have those initial strategies, working, this concept into mind when you first bring it up with their marketing mix discussions?
Honestly, it's a mixed bag. It depends the lens that you come into those conversations with. If you are a growth focused organization, meaning I have to hit this objective because of X, Y, and Z by the end of the year, or there's a market that's shifted and I need to find a solution, or there's an opportunity, and your focus is not on the how, but on the why, you can now reverse engineer that process and figure that out quite easily. The mentality is, I think, the most important thing I look for when I'm dealing with prospects. But once you get that mentality there, you can start looking at data, you can start running forecasts, you can see if the buying behavior exists, you can look at geography, you can start figuring out all those different things and start figuring out, does it make sense for us to, start running ads? Does social matter in the marketing mix for, maybe those people that are in the consideration phase of the buying journey, or, ranking organically? That's going to take time. Do they have the runway financially to get to that place when their competition may not be sleeping? They might be pushing pretty hard on that. So, that mentality is important. The ability to learn, have an openness, or a humility almost is important, especially as a marketer or a business owner, or somebody who might come across as a know-it-all. Frankly, like sometimes it's hard to take, especially when you're being put under the magnifying glass. We use an analogy all the time, and I'm gonna use it right now. And it was something you created, Jordan.
Steal my story.
I'm stealing your idea. But it was, we talk about how Atrium started, and how it wasn't about this idea of just creating, traffic generation programs and, oh, we run your social. And, it was about creating consistency. And we started looking at what organizations do that, and those process engineers, right? And we talked about that prior. But the reality is, the analogy that we use that works is a process engineer going into a car manufacturing plant where maybe the manufacturer is saying, I need to produce 10% more vehicles per month or per year or whatever, or I need to increase revenue, which means I got to do X, Y, and Z in my manufacturing plant, which means you're looking at your staff, you're looking at robotics, you're looking at every individual part of that assembly line and making small, unique changes. So, i.e., the paint needs to dry quicker. Do we move it to a different part of the assembly line? Do we now get Bob to do something on the assembly line while that's happening? Do we, move this into robotics, or do we change the conveyor belt timing? All those little tiny things, iterative little changes turn into a lot over time. And that mentality, back to what I was saying, is really important, because you're not going to jump in and make some massive impact through one little thing and be able to do it a second time, a third time, a fourth time. So,
yeah, and I think that that analogy we use of the factory and producing cars, it's about inputs and outputs and all the little elements in between. But then you apply that to marketing, right? So you take all these things we've been talking about that kind of focus on consistency as part of what a marketer needs to do, and you look at problems like a marketing mix or developing a marketing mix much more through that lens, and you go, oh, okay, a marketing mix is really just the elements that make up the factory. And in order to make sure that I produce the proper outputs out of that factory, I need to be able to measure all the things that connect all those elements together. Otherwise, I'm just looking at a board of activity without any idea of how they're all connected or how they relate to each other. So you can, you use the example of the paint drying at different rates, and you can maybe move the order of the assembly line as a result. But for a marketing challenge, that could be as simple as, well, we have a campaign from ads going to the same place that our organic search is going, but the follow-ups are the same, but we're realizing that the people coming from organic search have a little bit of an earlier stage in the buying cycle, so they only require 2 touches after that, versus the ones from ads require 3. And that comes from the data and measuring it. And then we can go into the system and tweak and adjust all those knobs that make up that system to get a different result of the output on the end.
Okay, so let's say I am a business owner. I'm looking at my industry. I've yet to dive deep in with both feet. Maybe I've run some ads in the past. Maybe I've done, my website was built 5 years ago. I don't know if it's relevant. You're facing these things knowing, like a deer in the headlights. I have to get to this new standard, but I don't know how to do that. I guess the next step is I have to find somebody who can help me. So Jordan Woolf, the question that I have is it possible, and I hope it is, because I want to hire them all, but is it possible to hire a marketing unicorn going into 2023? Does that exist?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we hear both on the hiring side when we're hiring into our agency, people getting out of that world where it's like, yeah, I'm getting job offers, but everyone's expecting me a graphic designer and also a social media expert and also understand data and analytics, all these other things. And going, I just can't do all those things. So you inevitably kind of upset whoever you're hiring, or you kind of fall flat and you don't feel valued. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be a specialist either, but the way that you're looking at hiring as a business owner kind of comes in with a bit of a education phase that needs to happen, I think, across the board, where people are expecting, yeah, we're going to hire a marketing person as some big monolith that's going to solve all of these problems. In reality, that's not going to be the case. It'd be the same as hiring somebody to, come into your factory that's going to run every station. They're going to know how to paint perfectly. They're going to know how to do wiring perfectly. They're going to know how to do cast steel plates and stuff. You're not going to find that person, right? That just doesn't exist. And yet in our industry, businesses all over the place start with that assumption about marketing for some reason. Now, it might be the case that was where it was, back in the day, but certainly if you ask me the question about 2023, that's the different thing. We are going into a world where you need a lot of diverse skills.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. It used to be like that. It used to be a scenario where, you knew how to do print, you knew how to do catalogs, you knew how to do all of this Corel Draw work, and all of a sudden the world evolved and now there's a website that needs to be manipulated, but I don't know how to do HTML, but I could figure it out because it was simple. Now you're a web developer, and you fast forward to to today, the same kind of scenario is happening where maybe how as the receptionist to update the WordPress website, because let's be honest, there's 8,000 blogs, HubSpot, this and that, YouTube videos to do that. And then your boss says, oh, but what about our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our Twitter, our TikTok, or whatever, although he's never going to say TikTok, but you know what I mean? And you're going to put your hand up because it's fun. And more than anything, you are on social media every day. It's more accessible and approachable and easier to take in bite-sized pieces. But social is a great example because it's not about your posts only. It's about all these other things, social listening and off-page and on-page management, all these things. So I think back to the whole unicorn concept, just thinking out loud, obviously no, I don't think that exists if you're a growth-focused organization. But to really understand that doesn't exist is, I think you have to really have a clear understanding as to the requirements of your marketing mix, the skills that are required, the mindsets, the all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a place to start from, it's probably that. Somebody who understands the connection at a minimum and then can find either individuals or other, tactics that will help to bridge the gaps of all the different skills needed to assemble that. When you're a business owner, and I think that's the perspective we're starting with here, is that you're a business owner trying to hire somebody. You're in a tough position, especially if you're coming from behind. Like if you're responding to a situation where you can see your competitors out there marketing well, they've got a great social presence, or you see ads from this competitor and it seems like it's really on point and targeted well. Coming from behind and wanting to set up all of these things simultaneously, it can be very daunting. And you're kind of boxed into this situation where you're like, well, what other choice do I have? I've only got budget to hire one individual. They've got to have all the skills. They just have to. It's the reality though, that in the end, even if you do hire somebody that's got amazing strengths in 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 different disciplines, they're not going to have the 8, 9, 12, 20 that they probably need in order to really accelerate the business. And the reality is that's what's needed in a competitive environment these days, because some of your competitors will have figured that out and they will be firing on all cylinders. The one thing that I will say is, like, if you're starting from somewhere, it's probably wise to phase into your marketing mix. Like if you don't have something assembled, or you don't have a good grasp on it, like I said, start from that one point of getting someone who understands how these things are connected is probably a good first step.
Well, and back to the point a moment ago is understanding the networks, understanding how they work, is important. And if you don't, ask. Google. Like, we live in a day and age where you have no excuse anymore. If you have a question, you can find that answer for free most of the time. Now, that being said, there's a lot of stuff online that isn't true. But the truth of the matter is, if you dig enough, you'll be able to figure that out. The step-by-step approach is not just in building out what routines, like, should I rank well right now? Well, if my runway is not 6 to 9 months and I can't spend that money, well, ads can get you some results pretty darn quick. If you're dealing with someone that knows what the heck they're doing, and piggybacking on what you're talking about, they might have that 1, 2, 3, 4 skills that are required, but they won't have the 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Advertising is a great example. We have staff that are incredible ads people, gifted at Google PPC and display and understanding the algorithm and the network and the requirements and how to dip and dive around certain industry standards and governing bodies and all these things. And then they go, work on Facebook and they're pretty well versed in Facebook. And then you go, okay, but now we got to run YouTube ads. And they go, oh, I don't know. I've never run even a forecast. I'll get back to you on that. And you realize really quickly that the next guy beside them is gifted in YouTube ads and also extremely gifted in the algorithms around TikTok. And so even within the online advertising world, expecting an individual to be an expert on all platforms is unrealistic. It just is.
And we as an agency, we can adapt into that because, like you said, the person beside them maybe does have that overlapping skill or the complementary skills. But as you know, I get it. As a small business owner, bootstrapping is the thing you got to do. So you're not left in the woods there either. There are some options. Like if I was starting a brand new company, or if I was an existing business that just hadn't really invested in marketing up till this point, bringing in that first individual or looking at assembling a team can be quite daunting. So, you know, having an individual that has something grounded to start with, that is something they know and they know it deeply, and then kind of branch out from there. Then use technology. The other thing we have going into 2023 is you've got a lot of really cool tools that get you maybe not that perfect thing. Like Canva is a good example. Canva is a great design tool to get you 80% of the way to exceptional design, right? Is it perfect for doing exactly everything your brand needs to do? No, it's not. It's not 100%. But if
It's
that's the
also
weakness
free
you're
though,
filling,
to a certain
exactly.
degree. Yeah.
Some of these tools are free, some of them are cheap, some of them are expensive. Either
Yeah.
way, you know, you don't have to hire a graphic designer now, because you can go, okay,
Hmm.
you know, I'm going to be okay if I just use Canva. Am I going to be
Yeah.
exceptional? No. But it gets you to that next step. That's the bootstrapping kind of mentality. The other option in that you have is finding an individual that understands the system, and then, you know, working with, you know, agencies, for example, like what we do. You know, you're getting a
Yeah.
fraction of the experts you need across that spectrum. So you do all of a sudden have 20 specialists that are being scaled up and down as your marketing needs expand.
For the cost of one marketing specialist in your office,
Yeah.
right? And that's just why agencies exist. Let's be honest. You know,
Mhm.
not everybody has the, finances to be able to build out an entire agency in their office. You know, and you were talking about phasing things in. There's really a number of things that you have to balance out, and some of the people listening will, of course, Chris, I do this every day, but there are some of these individuals that are listening that don't know how to scale from nothing, or maybe they've got some revenue coming in from a certain marketing channel, but they don't know where to go next. um, you have to be wise and attack the low-hanging fruit that's going to get you your ROI while balancing out your short, medium, and long-term goals. So, like, for example, organically ranking will have such an impact on your business long term, where your cost per acquisition will be as inexpensive as free, depending on your market, right? So, really balancing out your objectives, short term, long term, being realistic about your market. We talked to a company last week. Hope he's not listening, but he wanted to take on some of the largest jewelry chain companies in Canada that are spending $1 million in ads alone a year. What was his budget? He was hoping $500 per month,
Mhm.
and that's okay. That's what he expected. There's no problem with having an expectation. There's a problem with not diving deep enough and understanding what that is, and then obviously don't push your budget beyond what you're happy with or you're comfortable with. The amount of times, Jordan, like I would almost dare you to share stories, because the amount of times that a client, has a runway of 2 to 3 months and is expecting the marketing mix to just revolutionize their business is just not fair to the agency. It's not fair to their customers, not fair to their business. Um, Being realistic on what each platform is going to do, and making sure that your budget is in alignment for that is, I think, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, just transitioning that, we were talking a lot about, um, just the individual, the marketer, not necessarily. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of that individual who's being told, hey,
Mhm.
you now need to start doing all these things that are outside of your skill set. I mean,
Yeah, we've mostly been talking about the business side of things, about them hiring
yeah,
some individual, but what about that poor individual that's now got to work within this unicorn expectation that we were just talking about?
yeah. So, like, how do they adapt to an
Mhm.
unrealistic expectation?
Yeah. I mean, the same thing applies where you're stuck in a situation where you're going to come in with the expectations you have. You've got the background that you've got, and the reality is the market overall, while there will be exceptions, there's going to be people with a lot of clarity and, you know, do hire without this unicorn mentality, and they are looking for specialists, and fantastic, maybe you'll find them. But on average, if you're out there in the job market right now, I guarantee you will come across these kind of unicorn situations. And
Mm-hmm.
not to say you avoid them like the plague, it's just to say you're going to be entering an environment where that's the expectation you're starting with. So if that's the case, those jobs are jobs you can take as long as you're, you know, looking at things like data is your friend. So you get into a position like that, start educating, start measuring, and start showing ROI where it is and where it isn't. And then you can kind of show the requirements of what your job actually is with the foundation that that hiring individual did not have when they hired you. So you're giving them value and showing here's the strengths and weaknesses of your model. And you also have that ground to stand on if they have
Mm-hmm.
critiques about like, well, I thought we'd do amazing in social. Well, it's like, great, not a problem. I agree. Here's what the competition's doing. Here's what we have access to. Here's what our skills are currently. Here's a way we could do that by outsourcing. Here's a budget
Yeah.
that we could apply to achieve that.
Well, but even with that, that sometimes is just flippin' daunting. I mean,
Mm.
not everybody has a marketing degree, and even if you have a marketing degree, maybe it's more of a PR twist. You know, it's tough. It's really really tough, and I have a lot of friends, a lot of people I'm you know connected to that maybe they're asked to do all these things in like an auto dealership type role where they thought all they had to do was take photos of vehicles every day, but now they're running the social. Now they're organizing the float at the parade, and that's marketing. You know what I mean? It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, there's an anxiety disorder, I think, that comes along with this topic for a lot of people, and my heart goes out to you because we've all been there, and I see people every day going through that. And I agree, the data is a really important thing, but I think it's also important for people to know how to get out of those scenarios. um, I am kind of unique in that I love education. I love helping people. A lot of agencies will say, "Yeah, you're not a fit, go away," and try to give you a place to land and make you someone else's problem. But if you're like that, shame on you. I like to help people in every conversation that I have, so that if I never talk to them again, they can at least look back and be like, "Wow, okay, I was pointed in the right direction." So that being said, nor do I want to see 10,000 phone calls tomorrow, but call a local agency. Ask people in that are are somewhere touching agencies, for colleagues or people. Ask people, because I think at the end of the day, agencies are here to partner with organizations. It's a service industry. Service meaning we provide a service. Yeah, there's a transaction, but much like a lot of law firms and such, they'll give some consultation as well to make sure that you're a fit for them as well, and that they're pointing you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that, to be honest. I just think that, in the end, um, you know, what we do is we're in the agency world, but this isn't a plug for us. I think that's just generally true across the board, hopefully, at other agencies. It's a wealth of, knowledge, exposure to a lot of different weird things, and just getting some different perspective can be a huge help to kind of position yourself where you need to be.
Truth.
Awesome. Well, did we do it again? Did we go through a whole podcast worth of stuff just by randomly talking for a while?
Yes, we did.
Hopefully this works for people. But we will continue to test and use data to see if this is something that works.
Well, we did 33 minutes.
Hmm.
So we're basically, we're talking at a decent pace. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like long form content, and there's not a lot of that in marketing. People like to kind of snippet it up and get these little short sound bites. So this is something I'd like to see happen in the world, is get more of these kind of deeper ideas out there, because I do think that the whole industry needs to kind of evolve and build upon good conversation. So whether that's two idiots talking today, or somebody else down the road that you get an inspired conversation with, one of your colleagues or somebody in your network, I think that just will all benefit in that process.
Are you
So
calling me
thanks
an
for joining
idiot
us on this journey.
because I'm drinking out of my Dan Levy mug?
Your Dan Levy wannabe haircut. Ooh, burn,
Is that the
burn.
case?
No,
Almost.
I don't think it is.
Almost. If I was in a movie and a celebrity had to be played by me, it may have to be Dan Levy. I'm not saying I look like Dan Levy. I mean, I know I don't, but there aren't too many celebrities that look like me. I don't know.
Yeah, I base my whole look off of if I couldn't in a moment's notice be pulled into as an extra on the TV series Vikings, then it's just not my look. So
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, Vin Diesel in Fast and the Furious or something like that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going there. All right. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this journey, and hopefully one of many more to come.
Cheers.